Hello, Steve White, Steve White's 89. Well, I wanted to do a review of just the first episode of He-Man Revelations. I did all 5 episodes because I watched it all at once, like a movie, because it's a series, but it's 2.5 hours, so it's more like a movie. And if you can't tell by my voice, I've already done this a few times because I just couldn't keep it short, but I'm just going to do that this time. Basically, the issues with the show are more about the promotion and the execution and the intention behind it than the actual episodes themselves. The show itself is fine. If you're not particularly attached to He-Man and He-Man's lore and mythology and the characters, if you're not a big fan of the original animated series, you probably can watch it and not be bothered or not be triggered or not be upset or not sort of have too many issues. But unfortunately, that's not how it was promoted, not how it was sold, not what people were expecting and not what people are reacting to. The original sort of promise was that it was going to be a continuation of the original show, and it's really not. And unfortunately, when Kevin Smith was called out on that, he just attacked the fans who called him out and insulted fans in general, and it became a big drama. And now there's this big drama surrounding this show, and the show itself doesn't really warrant the criticism it's getting as a whole because of, like I said, the promotion, the PR, Kevin Smith's behaviour, and the intention behind some of the choices made, which are very obvious when you look at it. But when you just look at the individual episodes and what's actually happening in the show itself, it's sort of different. So that's really the problem with the show. It's not the episodes itself. It's not so much the story and the voice acting or the animation. It's more that there are people with political agendas in the production and in the criticism of the show on both sides that are fighting for their own issues that are bigger than the series. And the series has sort of been drawn in and thrown in amongst all of this, which is really just its own issue all on its own. And this has happened with a lot of TV series where people have sort of one agenda and they come into a show and they make it really obvious that they're pushing a certain agenda, and then the audience, they trigger certain members of the audience who then fight, and then it all becomes about the politics, and it sort of sacrifices the show, and other fans who are upset that the show is sort of being compromised make legitimate criticisms, and then they get attacked and lumped in with the alt-right people, and it just becomes this big nasty mess. And that's what's happened with He-Man, and it's happened for me as well because I sort of criticised the show, and I was called an incel and a misogynist, and I was told basically I hate strong women because I can't find a woman who'll have sex with me, and I'm like, I'm a gay man. I was raised by my mother with my sister and my nieces. I've worshipped Cher and Madonna and strong women like that my whole life. I don't have that issue. This is not why my criticisms of the show have nothing to do with that. But people can't hear that because they're just listening to their own agenda and their own narrative, and it's not about the show. And that's why it's a bit hopeless at this point defending or attacking the show. It's like Star Trek now. It's bigger than that. And I did a whole video about that. So yes, the show itself, there's a few issues with the show itself. I'll go into the production first because that's the easiest thing. The art, the animation is beautiful. Some of it is really stunning and really well, smooth. It blends well. The other parts that are very 3D and look very computer animated, and they don't really mix and they blend and they don't blend, and they sort of, there are moments that are a bit jarring where it sort of jumps out, but there are also moments where both individual elements are quite amazing on their own, but it's not sort of smooth. So that's one criticism. Another criticism is the voice cast. Mark Hamill sounds like the Joker. He doesn't really sound like Skeletor. Buffy sounds like Buffy. Sarah Michelle Gellar, she may be a good actress, but doesn't really have the voice skill to hide her voice. They really should just hire another actress rather than someone so recognisable in another role, because you just can't not hear Buffy when she talks. And some of the other actors seem to be miscast, and they don't seem to know the characters. Like Merman doesn't talk like Merman, and they had Alan Oppenheimer, who originally played Skeletor, playing Mossman instead of Skeletor, and there are little things like that. Henry Rollins seems well cast. Everyone loves him. I don't have trouble hearing him because I'm not really that familiar with him, so that's all okay with him. But so some of the casting's a little bit off, some of the animation's a little bit off. Some of the dialogue is a little bit off because of some of the issues of later episodes, but not so much in this episode. And there's a couple of story points in this and mythological issues in this first episode that I'll mention that don't sort of make sense either. I'll get to that now, basically. So the episode starts off with, first we have a little introduction which sort of goes over the original story that sort of was in the original credits and that as well. And they use some very 80s style toy animation art, which is really nice. I'm not sure if they pulled original art and just animated it or if it's all new, but it's quite beautiful. And then they go into the first scene, which is a hooded figure taking two prisoners to Grayskull. Basically, it's He-Man, and he's got Clawful and Spikor, and it makes no sense because why would he take them to Castle Grayskull? Are they going to be put in a dungeon? I mean, is the sorceress going to give them a stern talking to? I don't understand why they've been taken there and why she would open the gates and basically allow Grayskull to be vulnerable. Now, she's not that stupid, fortunately. She knows right away it's Skeletor, but what she doesn't realise makes less sense. Now, it sort of makes sense that she would be fooled by two beings using magic to hide themselves as two other beings. But she sees that, but she doesn't see through something else. Now, while this is all happening, they have Tila being promoted to Man-at-Arms. They have a whole ceremony with fireworks and everything at the castle, and everyone's celebrating. And you have hijinks between Orko and Cringer, and it feels pretty much like He-Man and the original series, and it's okay. You see Adam show up, and then you're like, well, who's He-Man then? It's Faker. Now, I may call him Fakor because I called him Fakor as a kid because it was Stinkor and Skeletor, and I know his name is Fakor, but yeah, Fakor shows up and he is pretending to be He-Man. Now, while Sorceress was telling off Skeletor and knocking him on his butt, He-Man walks behind her into basically onto the drawbridge and into the doorway of Castle Grayskull, and she doesn't even realise now how she could not know that this machine wasn't a human being and wasn't a being, full of the power of Grayskull is not really believable. So that's an issue. And now she escapes into the castle, she protects herself in a force field, and then she's just under attack by Skeletor and all those. Now, at the ceremony, eventually she calls to Adam, and he alerts Man-at-Arms, and he says Grayskull needs defending, and the ceremony's shut down, everyone goes to safety or to battle. And all that is staged fairly well. The sets, the backgrounds all look great. The characters are all fine at that point. There's really no issue at that point. But then once we get to the battle, part of it is good because we get to finally see a big, large-scale battle. We have all Skeletor's minions, like a whole army of them, taking on Castle Grayskull. And Castle Grayskull has these crystals which are shooting out lasers, and it's all kind of that epic sort of battle that we all sort of staged as kids with the toys and the castle and everything. And it's great. That could have been a whole movie. It could have been a much bigger story. It's way too short, way too rushed, and very much a missed opportunity. And it just sort of gives you enough to feel like, oh, this is what we could have had, and it's a bit disappointing ultimately. Now the next part that we get to, there's a couple issues. Now, He-Man and Skeletor are fighting. That's all fine. It's well staged. It looks good. We all wanted them to have this epic battle. But at one point, Moss Man steps in and Skeletor kills him. And He-Man is so enraged that he actually stabs Skeletor. Now, He-Man would never have killed anyone no matter what. He wouldn't have tried to kill Skeletor no matter what. So that's out of character. And it's all just a trick because Skeletor conveniently placed himself in front of what is essentially the keyhole to this prism, which is hiding an orb which is containing all the mysteries of the Elders and the magic that created Grayskull and the whole universe. And Skeletor was there for that. And he even says that earlier on, look, I'm here to tear the whole castle down to get to this power that's hidden down here. So the power sword, like a key, opens this up, the orb floats out, Skeletor cracks it with the Havoc staff, and all the power is let out. Now the sorceress stalls everything just long enough to allow He-Man to work out that if he uses the power sword, he can use that as a conduit to absorb the power and save the universe, because basically the power being let out is going to destroy the planet and destroy Eternia. So they do that. And while he is absorbing the power, the power sword splits, and I think this is part of the process of channeling and absorbing the power, because they were originally two swords that had their own powers. And we see that He-Man is Prince Adam, and this, of course, upsets Steela because she wasn't in on the secret. And basically Adam and He-Man, they're selfless, they sacrifice themselves, they're destroyed, the power is released on some level, it's mostly absorbed, but some of it's released, and it totally destroys He-Man and Skeletor. They're just a black stain on the ground, basically, from the explosion. And then we go back to the castle, and we see Man-at-Arms telling King Randor that He-Man has succumbed, and of course Melina knows this means her son is dead. And frankly, I got emotional because it's Melina and she's like finding out Adam is dead. But then, and of course the king is enraged that they allowed Prince Adam to maintain this masquerade and endanger himself and ultimately be destroyed. So he banishes Man-at-Arms, and this is where Teela is out of character. She suddenly becomes selfish, narcissistic. It's all about her and her feelings. She's not thinking about the queen, she's not thinking about the king, she's not thinking about her father who's just been banished, and he's given up his job for her and now been banished, and she's just has a total tantrum like a child who, I mean, she shows that she wasn't fit for the role, which we know Teela was, but this Teela really isn't. So she's really out of character. And one of the things that also happened, and then basically she storms off, and that's the end of the show, basically. She says, I denounce magic, I denounce lies and sorcery and everything, you've betrayed me all, and I'm gone. And that's the end of the show. So she's out of character. Another thing that is sort of outside of the mythology that doesn't work, there's a lot of different mythologies for the show. Now, I consider three main ones. There's the original mini-comics, because they were the first. They came with the toys, because the toys came first. Then there was the animated series, and then there was the later animated series, which goes into a lot of depth with the mythology and really expands on it. So I kind of consider those as sort of the three main ones. But unfortunately, there are a lot of licensed products, a lot of books where people just made up their own stories. So there's a lot of different versions of what Castle Grayskull is and the power of Grayskull and where it came from. There's literally like 10 versions of it. Every sort of storybook and licensee had their own version of it, and you can't take them all into consideration. Unfortunately, Kevin Smith uses that to justify what they did in the show. When you see that Prince Adam is He-Man, you also see that Castle Grayskull was just an illusion to hide the Hall of Wisdom. Now, when I saw this in the comic prequel, I assumed they built Castle Grayskull around it or in place of it to sort of hide the secrets, not actually just create an illusion. Being told as a fan that Castle Grayskull never existed, it was just a hologram basically, it really is part of trying to deconstruct the show and the characters and the mythology and sort of diminish it for us and taking stuff away from us. And like with the male characters, you don't have to demean the male characters and reduce them to make the already strong female characters stand. You could have just done a show about Teela finding out about He-Man and having her issues and finding her own path and her fate and destiny as the sorceress and all that. You could have done all of that and not had to take away from the male characters and the He-Man story and the mythology that existed. To say Castle Grayskull never existed, that just, I can't take that, can't handle that, can't process that, it's just wrong. And also the other issue is it was only mentioned in one story. There was one little book and tape or book and record from a company called Kid Stuff, which did a few different stories, and they basically had the story that all the elders of Grayskull put all the wisdom and the power of the universe into an orb and hid it inside the Hall of Wisdom, and then disguised that behind the illusion of Castle Grayskull. So they're using that and saying, well, that's canon. That we can use that justifies everything. So it's we didn't make it up. We didn't ruin anything. That's just that was the original story. No, it wasn't. That was just one licensee creating one story, which wasn't part of the overall bigger canon that was validated and sort of what we sort of followed and what is sort of recognised as canon in the story and the mythology. So those are the main issues for me. Teela's out of character. The sorceress doesn't see through fake, or the mythology is they're relying on things that shouldn't really count, and some of the voice acting is off, and the animation is a bit doesn't really blend well. So other than that, though, the show itself is fine. It's enjoyable. I enjoyed big parts of it. The battle, all that. Like I said, it could have been a movie. It could have been bigger. You wanted more. It was really only when you get to the end and you realise that they're removing He-Man. Because I said this. I said, oh, they're going to kill He-Man. They're going to get rid of him. It's all going to be all about Teela. And I wasn't really joking. I thought they'd do that. And I thought, no, they'd never do that. Why did you say that? You're going to sound so stupid. People are going to make fun of you for even thinking something like that. And then they did it. And their defence is, well, why would you think Mattel would let us kill Adam or kill characters? They killed Orko. They killed Mossman. They killed Roboto. Why wouldn't they leave Adam dead? People are putting all this faith in, oh, they'll fix it in the next half. They'll fix it in the next half. I don't have any confidence in that. I don't know that's going to happen or not going to happen, but I don't have any confidence in it. So that's my review of the first episode. That's my understanding of why fans on both sides are upset and why they're fighting. It's more about their own politics and their own personal agendas and narratives that have all been drawn in. And the show itself is not that bad, but there are issues, and they mostly come through Kevin Smith not being a fan and not being familiar with the actual lore and mythology of the show. And Ted Bearsili or whatever, he's been accused of being an activist and having an agenda, and if that's true, then that would sort of explain why some of the choices were made, which we are putting down to Kevin Smith, but they may have actually not been his, and he may have just been going along with it because Ted's the boss, which is, there's a lot of different theories about why things were done the way they were and so forth. But I wasn't in the room. I don't know. This is just my review, my understanding from what people have said, and I've seen a lot of interviews, a lot of criticisms, a lot of commentaries, read a lot of comments, had a lot of accusations, a lot of people insult me, and groups block me and cut me out because they don't sort of want anyone criticising Revelation because of their issues, and it's all about their politics and their narrative, not so much about the show or about fans or the actual criticism, and it's just a big mess. And I just want to do a video about that. I probably should have done two separate videos, one reviewing the show and one talking about the issues with its reception and the fan base and the man babies and everything, but I did one. I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. I didn't keep it to 15 minutes like I planned, but I did my best.